Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're just waiting to have everybody online so we can begin. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Veronica Allen, and I am the events manager at Innovative Publishing, who is the parent company of MedTech Intelligence. I am going to be your host for today for the MedTech Intelligence virtual event, Mastering Compliance, Essential Insights into PMS Documentation, that is sponsored by Saligens. A couple of housekeeping items before we begin. You are listening in using the GoTo's base broadcast system using your computer speaker system by default, and there are no calling numbers. If you have problems with the audio, the first thing to do is please try to increase your computer's volume. If that does not work, please log out and try to reconnect again. Please do let me know via the chat box if you're having sound issues. You will receive a copy of the recording in about 24 to 48 hours for your review. Today's event will consist of 45 to 50-minute presentation by our speakers, followed by a Q&A period. You will have the opportunity also to respond to interactive polls to be displayed on screen. We do encourage you to participate. You will be able to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the chat pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time. During the presentation, we will collect them and address them during the Q&A session after the presentation has ended. There are no handouts for today's event, and they will not be emailed afterwards. Like I said, you will receive an email with a link to the recording in about 24 to 48 hours. You will be able to review the webinar on demand. Now let me introduce today's speakers. Dr. Kasturi Rao is team lead of medical device services at Saligens. She holds a Doctor of Philosophy in cancer research and has 11 years of overall experience in medical device regulatory affairs and scientific writing. Dr. Rao has extensive experience in handling end-to-end post-market surveillance documentations. At Saligens, she leads a team of medical writers who specialize in creating various regulatory documents such as CEPs, CERs, PMS plans for market surveillance reports, periodic safety update reports, and post-market clinical follow-up plans and reports. Dr. Anushree Singh she is manager / senior SME and medical devices at Saligens, and she has also a doctorate degree in neuro-oncology and a master's degree in bioscience, human genetics, and an overall experience of 6 years working as a researcher and lecturer and 4.5 years in the medical devices industry. At Saligens, she provides strategic advice to customers on regulatory strategy for clinical evaluation, post-market surveillance, including post-market clinical follow-up and clinical evidence pathways. She leads a team of qualified medical writers, expert in clinical evaluation of simple to complex medical devices, authoring various regulatory documents such as clinical evaluation plans and reports, PMS plans and reports, summary of safety and clinical performance, and PMCF plans. Welcome both, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Veronica. We're happy to be here.
Can you all see my screen? I hope so. Thank you for the introduction. Sorry, one second. I'm just facing some difficulties. One second. Right, so our topic for today's webinar is Mastering Compliance, Essential Insights into PMS Documentation. I would first like to introduce our company, Selligence. We were established in 2017. Selligence provides unique operational, strategic, and scientific expertise with the help of technology to help manufacturers achieve their regulatory compliance in time and cost-effective ways. Presented on this slide are some of the clients that we have worked with. Here we have an overview of the services we provide. We provide expert solutions and consulting for MDR and IVDR requirements, including gap analysis, CER writing, and device registration, amongst other services that are listed on the slide. We have extensive experience in EU MDR across a wide range of therapeutic areas. We have had opportunities to work with global device manufacturers on their regulatory documents and have shared their success of achieving EU MDR compliance. This is mainly due to our excellent team of SMEs, doctors, engineers, medical writers, and regulatory experts. So Veronica has already introduced me, but I do want to highlight my experience here at Selligence, particularly with PMS documentation. My team and I have drafted multiple end-to-end documents required for PMS compliance and have also helped address notified body comments. So I'm very happy to be here with all of you today to share some of our learnings. Anushree, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Kasturi. So again, Veronica has already covered a major part of my introduction. I just wanted to emphasize on another point with regards to notified body observations. So my team and I have successfully completed several projects related to addressing notified body observations as listed on the slide here. And I'm looking forward to the discussion today. Today's webinar will focus on the essential components of PMS documentation, building a strategy for PMS compliance and PMCF. We will also talk about common observations from the notified bodies and how to navigate them. And lastly, we will look at how one can utilize technology to aid us in the PMS documentation process. So to start with, I would like to give a brief overview of the medical device life cycle, starting from the idea approval phase all the way to the product launch phase. So the first phase here, as listed on the slide, is the idea approval, which typically starts with identifying a need or a problem in the medical field through market research, feedback from healthcare professionals, or recognizing gaps in the existing products, followed by developing a concept and assessing its feasibility. The second phase is the design and development. This includes detailed design, engineering, testing, and refining of the product to meet regulatory standards and user requirements. Thereafter, you perform the verification and validation of the medical device to ensure the safety, efficacy, and reliability using tests such as bench tests, animal studies, or clinical trials. This is followed by the next step, which is the regulatory submission step to seek approval for the product to be launched on the market. Post the market launch, the manufacturer is expected to conduct post-market surveillance or PMS with continuous monitoring and surveillance to ensure that the device is safe and it performs as per the indication in a real-world setting. The focus of today's session will be on the PMS documentation of medical devices. So before we move ahead, let's start with a quick poll. So Kasturi, what in your opinion do you anticipate we will see with regards to the question that we have in the poll, which is what is the most challenging aspect in effectively implementing PMS for the device?
Yeah, so I mean, it could be a close tie-up between, I think, option B, which is identifying and assessing potential risks associated with the device, or option D, where they could be facing difficulties in engaging the end users. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see the answers.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, again, what we've seen in our experience, these might be option B for sure. Oh, I see. Interesting. Thank you, Veronica, for presenting the results. I see the maximum results, 51% is regards to option D. Sorry, Veronica, could you go to the results slide? Yeah, this one, thank you. So option D is 51%, which is engaging device users in active surveillance participation. I can see why this could be a challenge with regards to, the end users and, getting them to actively participate in processes like surveys, for instance, that we've seen also with some of our customers could be a potential challenge. And then we have a tie between option A and C, which again is interesting because in our experience also, we've seen that timely reporting, there can be questions about that, if this is not presented in a timely manner, any risks that might be identified or any adverse events that might be identified, and then to do the updates to the technical documentation based on those information. And then the first point also, Kasturi, there's a 20% that we got for ensuring compliance throughout the device lifecycle. It's interesting.
Okay.
Right. I wasn't expecting D to come up as an option, but yeah, that's interesting. Right. So we would like to continue with the discussion with regards to the PMS system to start with. So the Article 83 of EU MDR states that a QMS and a PMS system should be established for each of your device, which is essentially proportionate to the risk classification and the type of the device. So the PMS system includes steps such as data collection, data analysis, risk assessment, documentation update, implementation, monitoring, and a feedback loop to incorporate lessons learned from the PMS process into future product development and improvement efforts.
Now let's talk about the essential components of PMS documentation. The EU MDR and MDCG guidelines provide information on the importance of PMS system and the required documentation. For further information for each of these documents, you can refer to the articles of EU MDR or the specific MDCG guidelines. Each of these documents has a specific purpose, and it is also important to know that they all feed into each other and ultimately become part of the technical documentation of the medical device. So where do you begin? You first have to have a clear strategy in mind to develop a robust PMS system. You first have to begin with your objectives. They should be specific to gather data for the indication of the device and should also focus on device variants, combinations, if applicable. It is also ideal to show that the manufacturer is proactive to collect PMS data. This can be achieved by utilizing diverse data sources. The data gathered should then be analyzed and reported efficiently and consistently. Risks should also be analyzed from various sources and should be in line with the established risk management process. Data for any specific safety and performance outcomes can be monitored through PMCF activities. It is essential that you collaborate with healthcare providers and obtain feedback and improvement ideas. As Anushree mentioned, this is a continuous process, and the gathered data should be used to assess the benefit risk profile of the device and make any improvements if needed. So where can you collect this data? PMS data sources can be broadly categorized as internal sources, otherwise known as manufacturer held data, and external sources. Safety and performance data should ideally be routinely collected by the manufacturer from their compliant handling systems. Post-market risk assessment outcomes like CAPAs and field actions can also help gain insight into the design and process related issues that could negatively affect the device lifecycle. Marketing data as well as PMCF data like specific clinical trials or surveys can provide valuable feedback about the device. Moving to external sources, They mainly consist of databases and registries that could reveal safety and performance outcomes of the device. This could include clinical trial registries and also adverse events databases. The ones listed on this slide isn't an exhaustive list. Additional databases can also be used which correspond to the marketed region of the device. Now, Udomed is also another great source for gathering device-related data. For those of you who are new to this, the European database on medical devices is an online electronic system that has been established by the European Commission to facilitate the regulation of medical devices and in vitro diagnostics throughout the EU market. By Q4 of this year, it will be mandatory for single registration number, also known as SRN or actor registrations, the clinical investigations, performance studies, vigilance, and post-market surveillance to be done on Udomed. The unique device identifier, also known as UDI registration, will also be mandatory from Q2 of 2026. Lastly, we also have the literature databases that can be used to retrieve published clinical literature, published clinical evidence for your device. Anushree, would you like to elaborate more on this?
Sure, thanks, Kasturi. So before I begin with looking at the literature aspects with regard to PMS, I would like to quickly talk about a little bit about the difference between what is listed here, which is the subject device, the equivalent device, and similar or benchmark devices, because we've seen in our experience that the concept of especially the equivalent device itself or the equivalence pathway is not clearly misunderstood, and there can be observations that may come up with this regard. So with regards to, if I take an example, subject device is very clear, it's the device under question, which is your own device. If you were to follow a pathway of equivalence, the equivalent device that could be considered could be perhaps your predecessor device, or could be even amongst different variants or configurations of the device. We've also seen with regards to, let's say, an example of a low risk device, then you could also consider, devices that might be from your competitors. Because this is low risk, those kind of, challenges may not be there with that regard. And then to come up with the explanation of a similar or benchmark devices, these are essentially the competitor or similar devices on the market that do have the same indication and intended use as your subject device. So be very wary of what you're trying to establish in your clinical evaluation or PMS documentation and the usage of such terms. So I would like to start with how one can establish the literature review protocol with the 4 points listed here. So to start with, make sure you choose the right databases that Kasturi just mentioned. So these have to be carefully selected in terms of the device in question. Choose the right number of databases that you're using in order to obtain the literature. And then with regards to search strings, ensure that if the subject device, if the equivalent device is included as per your clinical evaluation, that the search strings also have to be created for the equivalent device. And of course, with regards to the state of the art, you should also be creating search strings and performing the literature search for similar devices as well as alternatives. Then comes the appraisal strategy step here. So with regards to this, keeping in mind that the inclusion and exclusion criteria should be clearly defined and documented in your clinical evaluation plan. In the subsequent slides, we'll also cover the use of the PICO strategy, the appraisal criteria that one could use in order to appraise the literature, and also the Prisma flow diagram. So then followed by the appraisal strategy comes the collection of data with regards to the safety and performance endpoints. So this can be identified from the clinical benefits or claims of the subject device, as well as the state-of-the-art literature. And following that, a comparison of the outcomes should be made between the subject device and the similar or benchmark devices. This is further then followed by the data analysis step, which should be performed using the clinical outcomes that have been obtained from literature and a risk assessment should be performed to establish the benefit risk profile of the device. Next slide, please. So let's look at, yeah, I think there was a bit of a lag. So let's look at how we can develop a detailed literature search protocol based on the device in question. So I'd like to cover a little bit about the PICO strategy highlighted on the left pane of the slide. So the PICO framework is essentially used as a means to focus on the 4 key elements, which is P, I, C, and O, listed here on the slides, to help you in conduct a more targeted literature search to identify relevant data on the state of the art. This strategy enhances the efficiency and effectiveness of evidence-based clinical data. For example, if your device is an implantable cardiac pacemaker, the P would stand for patients diagnosed with certain types of arrhythmias. The I would stand for using the subject device, which is essentially your cardiac pacemaker. The C here should include different types of pacemakers or alternative treatments, such as medication therapy. And finally, the O would stand for the outcomes, such as improvements in heart rate, restoration of normal heart rhythm, etc. And on the right-hand pane, what you can see is the Prisma flow diagram, which essentially is a graphical representation used in systematic reviews and meta-analysis to illustrate the flow of information throughout the different stages of the review process. So with regards to the Prisma flow diagram, I would like to highlight some of the key points one should keep in mind for the 3 phases of the Prisma flow diagram, which is essentially the identification, the screening, and the inclusion of the literature. So with regards to identification, one can look for articles from different sources, like Kasturi mentioned previously, such as the literature databases, device-specific registries, and even focus search to look for relevant data. Following which, you will perform the L1 and L2 screening. So L1 screening stage, again, make sure that the inclusion and exclusion criteria is specific to your device and is relevant. At the L2 appraiser stage, one can appraise the articles based on the appraisal criteria mentioned in the IMDRF guidance, which is the DAPR TOFSC criteria. And lastly, the step would include the inclusion of articles to present relevant data on the device as applicable.
So now that you have all your data shortlisted, it's critical to capture the right data. When it comes to selecting safety and performance parameters, it is a crucial requirement to select endpoints that are measurable and which also provide data for your device claims or benefits. For example, if your device is a dental device, the performance benefit would be effective space closure, and the endpoint would be the measurement of the tooth movement in millimeters. Similarly, if the safety benefit is reduction of gum disease, the endpoint would be the measurement of the rate of gum disease reported post-treatment. So if large data sets are present, normalizing the data and representing the outcomes as weighted average should be considered. The data presented from these endpoints should provide evidence for all the device indications and device variants or combinations if applicable. Comparing the same endpoints from benchmark devices will identify if your device is on par with competitor devices available in the market or if it's a state-of-the-art offering. The safety data obtained from all the data sources that you have used should be analyzed for any new risks to identify if there's any change to the benefit risk profile of the device. It is essential that the analysis performed should be represented clearly and consistently, along with justifying any outliers or mitigation plans if applicable. So to summarize the literature process flow, you should have a clear search strategy in mind and design your search strings to be sensitive and precise with the use of keywords and Boolean operators. This will ensure that you obtain relevant studies, which can then be analyzed based on the L1 and L2 screening strategies defined. The data should then be analyzed for specific measurable and endpoints, and an acceptance criteria should be formed from benchmark devices. Finally, the data should be analyzed and represented effectively and consistently in all the required PMS documents. There could be scenarios where there is minimal evidence for the device safety and performance. There could also be instances where the device has multiple indications, but the required data is not present for all. In such instances, the manufacturer can opt for PMCF activities to gather the required data. Similar to all other processes that we discussed, a PMCF strategy is essential to establish before beginning any of the activities. There should be clear objectives in mind, and they should focus on gathering the required data. The strategy could include using general methods like literature and adverse events searches, which we have already discussed. Specific methods could include analyzing data from registries sourced from either the manufacturer or which are publicly available, PMCF studies, real-world evidence, or the most commonly used and feasible process that we have seen, which are PMCF surveys. We will now talk about the best strategies in designing and conducting an efficient PMCF survey.
Yeah, I think Kasturi, PMCF surveys we've seen in our experience can be a great option as a PMCF specific activity compared to, let's say, a clinical study or clinical trial. So we would like to cover some of the aspects or some of the factors one should keep in mind when planning a PMCF specific survey. So factors to consider before you initiate the survey would include the risk classification of the device lifetime, whether it's a short or a long lifetime of the device, what information is there in the patient charts, which essentially is the endpoints and the objectives, who are the end users of the device, whether these are professionals or laypersons. Make sure you have that information. Have enough devices been sold to get a sufficient response with regards to the survey? Is the time frame for the execution and completion ideal that you have come up with? And lastly, does it comply with the GDPR data privacy considerations, including ICH, GCP, and HIPAA? So just to go over briefly the steps that are mentioned on the slide here with regards to the survey execution, that would include starting with the scoping and planning of the survey, which then ties into the CR and PMCF identification of the survey objectives. Then one creates the survey protocol, how the survey should be conducted from start to end. Then you deploy the survey online for the recipients to take up the survey. This is then followed by collection and analysis of the relevant data. And then finally, the data and the outcomes are collected in the PMCF report, and that is fed into the CR or the PSUR based on the outcomes reported. And for the survey, make sure that the endpoints are clearly defined, and these can be set up as part of the questionnaire. And next, we would like to talk about how one can design the PMCF survey questionnaire specifically. So a PMCF survey needs to be carefully crafted with keeping the factors in mind, what we already talked about previously. Apart from that, there are these 5 important things that one should consider that I would like to briefly go over. The first one being the device usage. So make sure you have questions that cover the device indications, the off-label uses, if any, the size configurations for your medical device, age range with respect to the patient population, and the duration of use with regards to patient contact. Next comes is the device performance. You can have questions related to technical success rates, questions on benefit performance claims, performance in line with the IFU provided, and any other benefits associated with the device. The device safety questions can cover aspects such as frequency of adverse events and device malfunctions, if observed by the end user who's taking up the survey, any clinical patient impact, and also any adverse event reporting. Other factors may include things such as additional benefits, accessory safety and performance, future usage considerations, etc. And lastly, very important, make sure you do have statistics in place with regards to obtaining a sample size, and this should be statistically significant. Next slide, please. Yeah. I would like to mention that recently Salogens also did do a webinar which was specific on PMCF strategies, and you can scan the QR code if interested to view the recording of the webinar. Right, before we move ahead, I just want to give a few minutes here, Kasturi, to the audience to scan the QR code and go over to the next topic we are about to bring in with regards to the notified body observation. So we want to focus and talk about some of the general observations that we've seen with regard to PMS documentation and also PMCF, and what are the best practices that we have adopted and that could help you in order to address those.
Yeah, we see a lot of notified body comments for both general PMS documentations and the PMCF, so it'll be good to go over it. So, okay, I think we're okay, I think we can go to the next slide. Yep. So, like I mentioned earlier, we get a lot of observations regarding PMS documentation. So I will go over the listed observations on this slide and mention the solutions that can be implemented. So the first comment mentions that there is a lack of evidence that the PMS plan fully complies to Article 83. As we discussed earlier, it is essential to have a well-defined PMS strategy with specific objectives. This should be elaborated with the PMS activities plan and should also mention the time frame in which these activities will be performed. This will allow the reviewer, this will show the reviewer, that the manufacturer has taken a proactive approach to have a robust PMS system in place. The second observation mentioned also talks about the same. So another common observation seen is that the complaints from the manufacturer have not been analyzed for trends and have not focused on patient-related outcomes. Notified bodies would like to see that the manufacturer has analyzed the complaints as per specific complaint categories like device malfunction or packaging or labeling errors, and should have reviewed the year-wise trends of these complaints. This will also highlight the efficiency of the manufacturer's post-market risk assessment procedures. A similar analysis should be done for clinically relevant complaints and any adverse events as seen in the next observation that could help assess the safety and performance profile of the device. Another frequent observation seen is that there is a lack of detailed literature search protocol. As Anushree explained earlier, it is necessary to document the strategy used for analyzing literature data and to show that there has been a systematic approach. Inclusion-exclusion reasons and appraisal criteria should be well defined. The data analyzed should then incorporate measurable safety and performance endpoints to gather data for the device claims and benefits. This data should then be compared to the acceptance criteria set from the outcomes of benchmark devices.
Yeah, before we move ahead, Kasturi, I just wanted to clarify to the audience here that these are some observations that we have seen, coming in from our customers who may need our support with regards to addressing the observations. Not necessarily all of them are coming in from our own documentation. So with that said, I would like to move on to the ones with regards to PMCF. So the first two are tied up. The first one being a PMCF plan has not been provided. So I want to emphasize on the fact that PMCF is no longer an optional requirement. A PMCF plan should be available for each of your devices. And this should include information, what has been highlighted as the second observation point with regards to details on the planned PMCF activities that you have in mind, including the well-defined objectives for those specific PMCF activities, if any. The sample size should be calculated statistically, what we just talked about. Make sure the timescale endpoints are mentioned for each of the PMCF activities and also the data analysis methods. And also make sure that you clearly define what are the general methods that you would be utilizing as part of the PMCF plan, and also any specific PMCF methods such as HCP surveys or device registries, etc. Then the next observation listed here, point number 3, is talking about the fact that the PMCF plan did not have an evaluation of clinical data on the equivalent device. So I would like to mention that the MDCG 2025 guidance on the equivalence is a good source to understand more on the aspect of using the equivalence pathway. It also gives you an example of the table where you can compare your subject device with the equivalent device with regards to the parameters. So again, if the equivalence pathway is being followed, it should be part of your procedure to also collect data as part of the PMCF activities on both subject device and the equivalent device. And then the last point here mentioned is that the PMCF plan did not clearly identify clinically relevant risks with regards to the ones that came from the risk assessment done as part of the clinical evaluation. So very important, anything that is coming out of your clinical evaluation, it does feed into the other aspects of your technical documentation, including documents such as the PMCF plan. So all of those should be updated as applicable.
Okay, I think it's time for another poll.
Yes,
and we would really like your inputs.
For this one. So the question here is, do you use technology to assist you with your PMS documentation requirements? So again, Kasturi, I'd be very eager to know what the audience has in mind with regards to technology, because I know this is quite new in our field, right? The use of technology, and just in general, people can be wary of using technology, or they may not have the awareness. So it'd be interesting to know where our audience stands today.
Yeah, that's correct. Do you have any thoughts about using technology for PMS documentation?
Oh, I'm all game for using technology. It makes your life easier. There is less chances of errors. There's so many manual processes that we've seen that, we can just have automation. Oh, we have the results here. Oh, this is great to know. So we have 39% of people already using technology. That's great. We can also talk about perhaps there might be some areas that you already know, some areas you may not be aware of. So in the subsequent slides, we will be talking about, leveraging technology. Then we have actually all three options are pretty close. The 39% for yes, 32% for willing to utilize it, and no for 30%. So I think it's going to be interesting for us to present in our experience where we see the potential uses of technology.
Yep.
Right. So, so I would like to firstly point again to the question, how can technology assist you with your PMS documentation? I think to lessen the burden on the individuals working on the PMS documentation, technology can be of great assistance when it comes to the overall medical device lifecycle. And generally, we in-house at Strategize utilize it as a tech-enabled service using one of our proprietary tools called Cactus, as you can see it on the left of the screen here. So I would like to actually touch upon some of the key aspects where you can utilize technology for the PMS documentation. So the first one here is automatic submission triggers. What this means is you can utilize technology for having timely notification for your upcoming notified body submission deadlines. You don't need to track it manually in any trackers or Excel sheets. It can be automated. You'll be informed well within time to address and make sure that your devices are in compliance. The second feature where you can utilize technology is the document update alert, wherein you can receive notifications about any updated technical documents that need to be updated with regards to any new information that might be coming in from, let's say, or clinical evaluation. The next one is very interesting, which is with regards to automated search for maintenance cycles. So we know that the maintenance activities have to be performed for the medical devices throughout the device life cycle. So where technology could help you would be with regards to, let's say, an example of literature search, wherein you can preset a future date for the search to be conducted, and you'll be notified with the results when the date has already been passed with regards to the literature search. So I think that's again one area you could utilize technology. And lastly, you could also use technology to search across all documents across the technical file documentation with regards to the information, whether it's consistent, are there any gaps, if any, how to address them using tech. And you can also look at, again, streamlining the entire review process.
Yeah, I can definitely vouch for how technology has improved our process and how it really has simplified the steps for us. We collaborate more efficiently as it eliminates communication gaps within the team. Using tools also helps to have all your required documents in one place, which can be organized based on your requirements. With the help of automation, we have also seen that data can be extracted and represented in a time-efficient manner. For example, it can help automatically exclude duplicate articles during your literature search. It can also auto-populate any abbreviations and references in your documents instantly. Getting notifications for a new version of the document or any required maintenance updates, like Anushree said, also make sure that you can address any regulatory requirements in a stress-free and timely fashion. Having all the data in one place also ensures transparency. And finally, having set reporting formats and organized data can ensure that uniform representation across all the required regulatory documents is present, and therefore can help facilitate a seamless completion and submission process.
Right, thank you for that, Kasturi. I think, again, I would say that use tech wherever you can. Of course, that's one of the key takeaways from this session today. So just to summarize the other key takeaways from the session today, that would be: make sure you implement a robust PMS system and adopt a proactive and systematic approach to gather evidence on the usage of your device. Have a detailed literature search protocol. So define the right protocol based on the device in question. Identify, appraise, and analyze the relevant data using some of the strategies that we talked about today. Define the safety and performance endpoints from sources such as state-of-the-art literature or the clinical benefits, and conduct a comparison of the outcomes with similar devices. Identify the opportunities for improvement. So improvements with regards to the usability, performance, and safety of the device, and update all the technical documentation as applicable. With regards to notified body observation, strategize and implement the required PMS activities, and analyze and represent all of your data efficiently in each of the PMS documentation. And lastly, use technology where possible to enhance data comprehensiveness and productivity. Thank you.
Okay, I think now we're open for questions.
Yes.
Hi, so we have a couple questions that I have put in the chat box for you if you want to start reviewing them, but I have one question from one of the participants. It says, bear with me please, it's a long question, so I'm going to read. If a manufacturer has to submit the technical file of a class 2B medical device in May 2024, which documents from which year the NB needs regarding PMS? Is it enough with PMS Plan 2023 and PSUR 2023, or they will need also PMS for Plan 2024?
I can take this one up, Veronica. Thank you for the question. So we would recommend to have as recent data as possible. So I would definitely say include data if it comes, especially if we are talking about a class 2B, which is a high risk class device. So we would recommend including data up until the latest submission. So if you're talking about May 2024 submission, have data in place up until all the way to April 2024.
Awesome. So we have another question that says, should we prepare one report and update it every year / times years or X number of years, or prepare a completely new report every year per year containing data from the past year? It's a little convoluted there.
Right, it's a little vague, but we can talk about different aspects. If the person was more specific, I would have highlighted, what the recommendation would be. But if you're talking about, again, report is also quite vague. So if I take the example of, let's say, CPCR subset, just to take an example. So there are frequency of updates defined with regards to the updation of such deliverables. Of course, it's specific for certain types of deliverables. So we talk about only CPCR for, let's say, a class 1. The frequency update could be easily every 5 years because it's a low risk device. You take an example of class 2A, you can have it from 2 to 3 years. For class 2B and 3, it should be annual update for those.
Okay, next question. The question states, what if you are first to market and you do not have a clearly equivalent device?
Mm-hmm.
How do you do a comprehensive comparison?
Sorry, Veronica, could you repeat the first part? I didn't catch that.
Yes. What if you are first to market and you do not have a clearly equivalent device? How do you do a comprehensive comparison?
Right, that's interesting. I'm guessing the person asking the question is talking about novel technology, novel device on the market. So of course, if it's a novel technology, you will not have any similar devices because you're the first one on the market, would be my understanding from this question. So what you can do is you can have, let's say, again, just a scenario. I'm not too sure about the specifics of the question, but if there was a scenario wherein your device is not completely novel, it has elements of an existing technology which has then been advanced using certain novel features, then you can have an established state-of-the-art section to highlight the fact that it's not completely new, but advanced features based on existing technology can be utilized. And if you provide a justification enough to say that your state of the art is all well set and provide the justification that these are the novel features and there is no other similar device on the market, that should work with the notified bodies. So essentially what we mean to say is that justification of not doing something or doing something is also an approach that one can take, as long as you justify why you have done certain measures with a legit reason, then that should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to add something here. So if you are sure your device is novel and you know what benefits the device has, and you've done a fair risk assessment, the notified body would like to see that you have done a comprehensive analysis of all the indications and all the safety outcomes with your internal testing. So that could be bench testing, clinical testing. So if you have a very well-defined system in place that has covered all of these options and all the criteria for your indications, for your variants, and have tested everything for clinical and safety outcomes, then that would be a good start. And if you have a good PMCF plan to say that you are going to gather all the data post-market and post its launch, then I think you will fit the criteria for the notified body. Yeah.
And I think, sorry, just to add one more point, if these are, again, high-risk devices, then, you could even perform some clinical studies to showcase that you have taken care and done a comprehensive assessment.
Okay, next question. Do you have literature search process examples for IVD reagent assay-based products?
I would say we are particularly focused with regards to this session today on the MDR compliance, but you may write to us on the emails listed here. Also contact us at Celogens.com to engage with the IVDR experts in-house. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Next question. I think we have enough time to do all the questions that we have, which is wonderful. How can a manufacturer estimate the minimum number of surveys answered to be able to analyze the data received and take it into consideration for the PSUR or PMCF report?
Right. I can take this one up. So like we talked about, getting the sample size, which is essentially how many respondents are you targeting, has to be done statistically. So that itself is the first, as part of planning your PMCF survey, is one of the factors taken into consideration. So you should be collecting data from, let's say, for example, your sample size is 50 respondents. We take the example of 50 healthcare professionals or end users that you're targeting to get the responses from. Then if you are to hit the number 50, of course, you have to send the survey to a little higher number, because not everybody may respond because of various reasons or factors or unavailability. It could be various reasons. So for a sample size of 50, perhaps have a target of 70 or 80 respondents, so you can get the number as close as possible to the required data set.
Okay, next question. And this one came almost at the end of the presentation. The person was asking, they were saying, you were mainly talking about MDR, but could it be translated to IVDR?
I think some of the aspects are common. For instance, if we talk about, the post-market surveillance activities and also the literature aspects that we looked into can be applicable to IVDR. And of course, I will highlight the same. If you want to know more about our IVDR expertise, please reach out to us on any of our email IDs or at Celogens.com as well.
Okay, I think this question you might have already responded to it, but let's see. For MDR compliance, does a manufacturer of a 2B MD need to write a PMCF plan, PMCF report, PMS plan, PMS report, and a PSUR, or does the PSUR replace the PMS report?
Right.
A lot of acronyms in there.
Yes. So again, we're talking about a high-risk device here, class 2B. You will have to have a PMCF plan in place. Not necessarily you need to include specific PMCF activities, but if we take example of if your class 2B device is a class 2B implantable device, then you would be required to conduct some PMCF specific activities, such as the HCP survey, or even perhaps you can take the path of a clinical investigation or clinical trial, because again, the higher the risk of, the higher the classification of the device, the higher the risk of the device. So I would say that you need to have a PMCF plan in place. The PMCF report would be dependent whether you're doing a specific PMCF activity or not.
All right, so we have a couple of questions regarding captives. And so I think that I might be able to combine both of them. One of them says, can captives be used by people outside Celogens? And the other one says, where will captives get the input from?
Sure. Kasturi, do you want to take this up?
Yeah, sure. So yes, Captis is available for for everybody, so do contact us. And where does Captus get input from? So we have linked Captus to the most commonly used literature search databases, adverse events databases, and we also, it's like we explained, that it's our common point for all the source documents. So we'll have our, all the documents uploaded, and that's where we can have one project created, and that's where you can have all your analysis, your reports, all documented in one place. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I would just like to add about this, Veronica, since it's a specific Captus question, that we also have certain features enabled in the tool with regards to specifically the literature review protocol, wherein the tool itself has the databases integrated. So you can essentially run your searches directly on Captus versus the database. Similar for adverse event searches as well, can be performed directly on Captus. And please reach out to us on Saligence.com if you want to have a demo of Captus. Our team will be happy to do so.
Wonderful. All right. So next question. I think we might be able to finish this. Do the NB require compliance with the NDCG guidance docs for PMS and PMCF, particularly formatting of plans and reports?
Formatting. I see. So I would say the MDCG guidelines are essentially, as the term says, guidance systems or guidelines to have the certain key information in place. You can, of course, feel free to modify as necessary based on your regulatory requirements with regards to the devices in question. But MDCG are essentially guidance documents, unlike the MDR, which are regulations.
All right, and one last question, and this is wonderful. We were able to get through all of them. How to analyze the complaint data informatively? Generally, how many categories the trending should be included for a reagent-based device?
This is, I think, again, an IVDR question. So we would say, please contact our IVDR experts in-house. They'll be happy to answer these questions.
All right, and I think that we got to the end of the questions with a minute to spare, which is wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Singh and Dr. Rao, and we want to thank all of our participants and our sponsor Saligence for this incredibly informative webinar, and we do look forward to seeing you at future MedTech Intelligence events. Please do visit our website at medtechintelligence.com. You will receive a copy of the webinar, a link to the recording of the webinar for you to watch on demand as you wish in about 24 hours. And thank you again, everybody, and we wish you a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.
Thank you, Veronica. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.